Hi, welcome to another edition of the Mainframe Book Club. Today I have with me Trevor. Trevor, would you like to tell everyone who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Yes, okay. Well, I'm Trevor Eddolls. I chaired, organized, created the virtual IMS, virtual Kicks, virtual DB2 user groups, and I ran those for many years till Planet Mainframe took them over. I've been an IBM champion from 2009 to 2025. I used to blog regularly at Mainframe Updates, and I wrote articles that appeared on Tech Channel and Planet Mainframe. What you might not know, though, is that I also worked as a therapist for a while. That was 2008. I trained for that, and I've written various books and articles and podcasts and things about how the mind and body works. Um, yeah, so that's me.
Well, I think Trevor, you're a really good fit for today's podcast, which is all about what I'm going to call tech sleeping nemesis, which is stress and burnout. And there's a couple of shocking statistics I've read. 91% of the people in the UK have said they've experienced extreme duress or burnout in the last year, and 72% of software developers have said that they've suffered from burnout. So I'll put the details for these reports into the chat. I think the 91% Mental Health UK. So it's a very big problem with stress and burnout, and with AI creating a more agile workforce. The demands are only going to keep increasing on people. So I thought what would be really interesting is to bring you on, Trevor, because you can obviously understand what that's like as a work practice, but also you can understand as a therapist how you can help people. Would you like to sort of give people a little bit about the background of what stress and burnout can look like? Because they're slightly different bedfellows, but often grouped together.
They are. I mean, there's some talk that sort of you suffer stress and then that goes away. But if it's prolonged chronic stress, then you kind of get into what they call overwhelm, where you just feel overwhelmed, and then you go into burnout. But that's kind of pop psychology mapping rather than research mapping. But it's sort of generally true. It's what people recognize. So, shall I tell you a little bit about stress? Would that work?
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting for people.
Okay. Well, let's start off with what Wikipedia defines it as. That's always a good place to start. They suggest that stress is the failure of an organism to respond appropriately to emotional or physical threats. And then they add whether actual or imagined. And that's quite important. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Um, some other people came up with an idea of three things that mean that you're going to be stressed. So, first of all, there must be an aroused physiological response. So, this is the body. The stressor must be perceived as aversive, and the person must not feel in control of the stressor. And I think we've all been through stages where we feel kind of out of control, that it's all getting on top of us. So from that, we can deduce that anything has the potential to be a stressor, and that can cause the individual to experience the stress. But the secret is that you and I could see the same stressor, the same thing could happen. We could see this horde of zombies walking towards us, or our manager, or whatever, and we respond differently. So not everyone responds the same to the same kind of stressor. So not all events stress all people equally. That's the thing to take away. Um, the other thing that people say is that although we can't necessarily control the events in our life, we can control our response to them. So the events don't cause us to become depressed or stressed or angry or whatever. It's sort of partly down to us. So that's where good therapy work can come in. And the other thing, of course, that not everyone recognizes when they're talking about stress is that there's actually two types. The guy called Hans Selye back in 1975 said some stress is good for you. this is what we do when we go training, so that we can run faster or lift more, or even if we're just revising something, we're trying to learn something, we're actually putting ourselves under stress. So that's what he called eustress. That's EU stress. So he said that's good for you. So you'll want some stress. Otherwise, I suppose you'd just be bored. Um, and the other stress, the negative stress, he called distress. So that's where the demands exceed an individual's coping capacity. And it stems from frustration, insecurity, or failure and leads to exhaustion, anxiety, and physical illness. So, how do you know if you've got stress? How do you know if the person sitting next to you or the person you're dealing with at the other end of some distant wire, how have they got it? Well, what are the symptoms? So let's run through those, shall I? I guess the most common physical symptom is headache. It's caused by people stressed, tensing their neck and their forehead and shoulders go up, all those kind of things. They're the signs of stress. But if it goes on longer, then you tend to get digestive problems. You get insomnia, you get fatigue, you get high blood pressure, you get nervousness, you get excess sweating, heart disease, strokes, and even hair loss. There are proof are needed that this is what stress does for you. You also get emotional responses to stress. So you get things like anxiety, anger, depression. You get irritability. I told you that before, didn't I? You get frustration. You get overreaction to everyday problems. You get memory loss. And you get that kind of lack of concentration where you just can't focus. And the psychological responses include withdrawal from society, phobias, compulsive behaviors, eating disorders, and night terrors. Where you suddenly wake up, not nightmares. Night terrors are kind of where you just wake up thinking that you're drowning or something, and it's just a stress-related thing. It's nothing to do with everyday life. And if you are showing any of these symptoms, then it really is time to do something. And it's best to do something when the symptoms are just slight rather than when they're getting serious, when we are getting to that kind of burnout stage. I can tell you a little bit about what happens in the body if you'd like. What's going on inside you, just briefly.
Yep, fire away, Trevor.
Okay, so we've got this thing called a stressor. This occurs. So this is our boss coming towards us. This is the horde of zombies that I mentioned. Whatever it is for you. Some people don't like spiders. Some people don't like the bloke sitting at the desk over there. That kind of thing. When that happens, your brain's actually divided up into a whole load of little lumpy bits that you can recognize and got names. But more importantly, things are connected into networks. But we'll look at the lumpy bits for the moment. The three parts that get involved with stress. So you've got a thing called the amygdala, you've got a thing called the hippocampus, you've got a thing called the hypothalamus. So I'll mention those just so you know they're little bits of the brain, and most of them are quite small. They're sort of, you see, they're about that size. They really are tiny. So the hypothalamus is the thing that really controls everything, but the amygdala sends it the signal that there looks like there's a stressor, there's a threat, and this hypothalamus has actually got two ways of doing it. It's got two things it can do. One is very quick, and that's where it just sends nerves down to your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands are tucked away near your kidneys in your back, and they produce adrenaline. And that happens very quickly. So that sudden sight of the headmaster, your boss, whatever, your adrenaline goes. And that's the start of your fight and flight. And that's quite good. It's immediate. And if you think evolutionary, that's what sort of saved all your ancestors from being eaten by predators or whatever. So that one's called the SMA pathway, and it's quick. The hypothalamus also kicks off a second one called the HPA axis, and this is a hormonal one. So it produces two hormones. They go to the pituitary gland, a little gland up inside your brain, which then produces another hormone, which then goes around your body, back to your adrenal gland, a different part of it completely. And that's what produces cortisol. Now, cortisol, lots of people talk about cortisol because it's the thing that becomes really significant when we're talking about chronic stress, the one that's going on for a long time. How do you know you're stressed? Well, your heart beats faster. Yes. Your blood pressure goes up. Your lungs actually dilate. They get bigger. There's getting more oxygen in because you need um, oxygen to give you the energy to actually fight or flight. Yeah. The liver actually releases its store of glucose, so you've got more food going around, so you can create that energy. You can do stuff, and all this is going on in your body. The other thing is it takes away blood from like your intestines and it gives it to your brain and your muscles. Now, if you're only a little bit scared, which you and I might call butterflies or excited, then we think that's good. But it's the same system. But if there's lots of adrenaline, then we really are beginning to shake. We're actually ready to fight or run away. Okay, so that's our immediate response to a scare. Um, Usually we look around and find that it's just someone having a joke, it's just someone walking by, it's nothing very much. It's a black sack being blown down the street on a dark night. It's not actually sort of something scary. And the front part of your brain, this bit, the prefrontal cortex, usually gets control and says, no, 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 it's all right, calm down. And everything turns off, everything calms down. You got this nice feedback mechanism and you relax. It's great. But chronic stress is the killer. You're going to ask a question.
Well, I was going to say, Trevor, I know that with the way we learn, the best way of learning until AI came along was that you had a certain amount of stress with the cognitive load, and that's how you learned. So you did stress yourself, and that's how you reinforced your learning. But now there's a lot more burnout happening, and we're seeing agile work practices and much more demands on people. Probably what would be helpful is we know all about stress. What can we do to try and offset the impacts of it? And what are some of the things that we should be doing?
Okay, yeah, we can run through some of those. That's no problem. Um, the thing that most people ignore are the obvious things that your nanny or your gran would just tell you about to make you better. And they're very simple things. They're like getting enough sleep. Sleep is the one thing that people seem to put off. You just have one more episode of your binge watching thing, so you're not getting enough sleep. The idea of de-stressing is to realize that sleep is really important. Go back to having 8 hours sleep. And it's not just that. It's not just saying, oh, if I've got to get up at 7 o'clock, that means I need to be in bed by 11. You've got to think, hang on, hang on. I don't go straight to sleep as soon as I lie down and pull the duvet over me. I sort of lie there for a few minutes, and typically it's about 20 minutes. So you've got to add that time on. And if you're not very good at going to sleep, you've got to add on an extra hour for it. And then at the other end, the alarm goes off at 7 o'clock. Not a lot of people leap out of bed and, start the day. Most people, oh, and there's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, snooze, whatever. So you've got to add that time on. So in the end, you actually need to be in bed for, I don't know, maybe 10 hours in order to give you that go to sleep time, wake up time.
Well, that's why I wanted to call it a sleeping nemesis, tech sleeping nemesis, because I thought it's a good way if people see the talk and remember it. Sleep is such a big factor. But sorry, Trevor, go on. I interrupted there, but that's what inspired me to choose the tech sleeping nemesis. That's where it came from, because I knew you were going to bring this up. So sorry, go on. I'll let you carry on with the.
Yeah, no, that's all I was going to say about sleep though. Is get plenty of sleep. The other thing is exercise. You know, too many of us spend all day. We get up, we eat breakfast, we sit in the car, we get in the office, or else we just walk into that other room, get in front of our computer, and we work then for 8 hours a day. I mean, we might walk to the toilet, we might walk and make a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. We might go and get some lunch somewhere, but we're not doing a lot of exercise. And we get to the evening and we're quite tired after that hard day's work. And we might go and sit down in front of the TV. It's not a lot of exercise. And your body, I mean, historically, sort of primitive humans used to walk around all day with occasional bits of running in order to find food to eat. So evolutionary, we're designed for movement and not just half an hour at the gym. It's kind of movement throughout the day. That's what you need to be doing.
It's a good point
Um,
you mentioned there, Trevor. With remote working, it's actually made it much worse now. I think people have become more sedentary with remote working. You're much more inclined to just stay sat in your seat. Even when you're in an office, you would have got up and gone and talked to people. You would have gone for lunch. You would have gone for a walk, maybe at lunchtime with a colleague. Nowadays, when you're working from home, you just don't tend to do that. So it's something that people should just note, I think.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We tend to be task oriented, so we want to complete that task, and then an email's come
Yep.
in, and we want to complete that task, and we think, oh, it's small. I'll just do that, and the day is gone. And yeah, although you've achieved quite a lot for your own personal health, you haven't moved. So movement. I know some people don't like the idea of exercise because they've never been sporty, but just think of it as movement. Move. If you like dancing, dance. These are all good things. Move. Um, One of the best things you can do is go for a walk in the wood, in the countryside, or along the beach, something like that. Those are all good. Woods, you get these hormones or in the air that sort of are good for you. But just think about moving. I know I did try it once, setting a timer every 20 minutes to get up and walk. And that was just irritating because I'd be in the middle of something and I stopped it. But if you think every hour, you know, one of the things about long haul flights is you need to get up and go to the toilet, not because you need to go to the toilet, because you're actually moving. It stops you getting DVT. So so yeah, don't sit all day. Move and try and move throughout the day, not just one sort of short period. Just keep doing that. So that's it. Sleep, movement, and the third one, of course, is what you eat. Now, horribly, so many people are obese or overweight or working their way towards type 2 diabetes or something like that. Um, Eat sensibly, avoid as much as you can ultra processed foods, the UPFs, because what they've done, what commercially you can do is you can take away the good ingredients that were in
Mhm.
the original recipe, your Mary Berry or whatever, and replace it with much cheaper ingredients, and they really aren't good for you. Now, I know we've all done it. We've all got our meal out the freezer, shoved it in the microwave, and eaten it because we don't have time. And that's fine if you do it now and again, but really think about trying to eat fiber, particularly. You remember how sort of parents and grandparents used to insist when you were young, you ate your veggies. Well, that really is important. Veggies and fruit really do you good. I mean, the 5 a day campaign was quite good, although they tend to think you actually need 10 a day. The A rainbow diet is quite good because it makes you eat different things. You've got to go through all the different colors, stuff like that. So try and choose, try and plan, have a 30-minute session on a Friday afternoon deciding what you want to eat next week, get it in the fridge, and then eat it. So, you know, don't eat UPFs, try and eat a varied diet, try and eat a lot of fiber, and yeah, don't overeat. Okay, so those are the absolute three basics. If you're doing that, you're putting yourself in a much better position. You're much more resilient to handling when people come around and start shouting at you because something's wrong. You're more likely to just sort of, laugh it off rather than feel that you've made a mistake. I've got loads of others though. Do you want to do some more? Shall I give
Yeah,
you
can
some
I ask
more?
one? I,
Yeah.
this is just purely for me. I want to ask on the basis that I don't know, but there's the expression, a problem shared is a problem halved. Is there any truth in that?
Yes. Loads of truth. Um,
Ah,
it's really interesting that if I've got a problem, I'm going to talk to about two or three people about it. Not because I think they're going to give me any therapy, not because I think they know the answer, but often just running it over like that is a great way of organizing what's really happening in your mind. And the trouble is with stress, it becomes very emotional. Yeah,
mm,
it's how I feel all the time. And when I talk to you, you're probably laughing. We might be down the pub, we might be having a coffee or whatever, but we're trying to have a sort of a jolly chat because that's basically what people do. And then I'm taking the emotion out of it, and I can see it logically, and I can say, oh yes. And also, you might say to me, yes, but the reason he said that to you was because he's got all these problems with something else, and I hadn't thought about that. I've only thinking about this sort of bell jar that's over the top of me and my
yeah,
life, and
yeah.
I'm not recognizing that other people have got problems. You know, a parent's died, the wife's gone into a hospital, something like that could be affecting why they're behaving in a way that seems, um, well, not very kind to me. And it's not just them being horrible, it's because of what's going on. So all those kind of things work. Yes, talk to people.
Uh, One more question here. Do you think remote work, and I'm going to clarify this, do you think remote working has had an impact? And the reason I say that, when you're at work, if someone says something to you, you kind of get the context and the meaning behind why they're saying it. But when you get it in an email, sometimes that same sentiment seems to get lost. And I wonder if that's also, just the fact that people are working from home and we've all adopted, oh, it's great, I don't have to travel. I've got my coffee machine, I can get straight out of bed, straight to work. All of this kind of thing is, everyone says it's great. But I sometimes think you lose some of the nuances of being in work and like camaraderie and having a laugh, having a joke, and just understanding where people are coming from when they say certain things. You don't get that from an email. You just get
No, well,
words on
you're
a screen.
absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, emails are the worst thing because you just see a sentence and you could interpret it in sort of 20 different ways. And it really depends on what mood you're in as to what you think the mood of the other person was. You know, maybe they were joking and they were serious, or maybe they're serious. And, you just don't know. Um,
It's
so,
almost like if you've
yeah.
got stress, you're going to interpret it in a negative way just because that's what your body's triggering anyway.
Yes, yes. And the more stress I mean, if you ask me to do one more thing, and I'm thinking, oh, for goodness sake, doesn't he realize? I'll tell you one piece of research they found that most people think that when they're having a conversation with someone, that the other person is going to recognize um, that they're having a bad day or a good day or whatever. Whereas in truth, most people don't really take much more than, seeing how the person is. And if they're alive and breathing, they probably think they're all right in a work environment. I mean, I don't mean sort of with families necessarily, but so yeah, it's very easy to misinterpret that. I mean, if you sent me an email and you work just in the next office, I'd walk around and talk to you about
Of
it,
course.
and it would be easily settled. What you were saying was this, and oh yes, and we can carry on. But if you sent it to me from Poland or wherever you're working, you know,
Yeah, you can't.
what can I do? Because we've got time difference, we've got all sorts of differences. So yes,
It,
it is hard. I think it can cause more issues and more hidden issues because if you're in the office, I can talk to you almost straight away, problem solved. If I've not got a scheduled meeting with you until Friday afternoon and this is Monday morning, it's simmering inside me for 4 days.
well, this is interesting you say that because I was talking to someone about burnout and something he mentioned that he said to me, he said, even when you're working in teams, cross-functional groups or different teams, sometimes it could be mainframe and cloud teams working differently. Sometimes it's just like you've got older people and new people. And he said it's very difficult sometimes when you've got some people that are very easy and confident using Slack and will have a lot of conversation going in Slack to then have to switch and wait for a Teams meeting where you can speak to someone in a Teams call because that's how they're working. And he said he actually found it very difficult because it was a kind of, I can talk to these people and just say it straight away. And he couldn't compartmentalize and treat everyone the same because different people were working in different ways. And that's a hidden kind of thing that no one considers.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think it's absolutely right. I've never really liked Slack myself because I've never found a use for it, but I can understand why if you're in a, you know, an organization with people spread out, it's a great way of chatting, or Discord or something like that, that you can just actually get in and speak. Because that's it. If you can speak to someone within 5 minutes of being upset by an email, the problem's solved. If not, it can go on for ages. If the next meeting isn't till later in the week, that's really hard.
I'm really enjoying this, Trevor, because I could ask loads and loads of questions. So apologies if I do. In terms of, do you feel that we're seeing more people facing stress and burnout now than we did 10, 15 years ago? Do you think it's
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll jump in to answer that question before you
oh,
finish it out. Yes, absolutely. Um, Two things I think cause that. One is people more aware of mental health nowadays. I mean, if you look back to old films from the 40s and 50s, everyone's trying not to let their neighbors know that something's happened, whatever it is. And there was a big sort of thing that men, we could
men
handle
were men?
everything. So yeah, you can just throw it on me and I can take that. Whereas nowadays, I think there isn't. I think people are actually recognizing that, there is a problem with mental health. And maybe the pendulum's going too far, that we're thinking the slightest thing is a sign that I've got ADHD or I've got something else or whatever, or maybe not. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case at all, but everyone is very aware of things. People are getting diagnoses of things like autism in their 30s and 40s. And you think, well, why wasn't that picked up before? It's just this whole, let me just finish. You've got this whole spectrum that there's not many people down the completely normal end, and there's
I've
not
always
many
said that
people down
it's
the,
yeah.
yeah, the sort of mental health, in hospital kind of end, but there's an awful lot in the middle, and it's sort of
Everyone's
where we're
somewhere on
going
a
to put the
spectrum.
line. Yeah.
Where
So,
someone's on a spectrum with it.
yeah, so we're all on the spectrum. So everyone's got one sort of thing about them that would possibly categorize them as having some kind of mental health issue. And don't forget, just because I'm feeling depressed today doesn't mean I'm going to feel depressed for the whole of the rest of my life,
Yeah.
or I'm feeling overwhelmed today. That's how I'm going to be forever. And in a way, that's what people think. How I am now is how I'm going to be forever. Um, and it's not the case. People change. You know yourself that sort of last week you were laughing and joking, whereas the week before you couldn't even be bothered to go out the front door. Well, not you, but that idea.
Can I ask one question here? Just I have a pet theory, but this is you're the ideal person to ask this. When you mentioned ADHD, I personally feel that, especially within the mainframe, some of the more specialized roles, I feel that people are more likely to have ADHD because the hyper focus allows them to go into these really specialized roles. Now, that might not be the case. So that's why I wanted to ask, because that's why they're really good at what they do, because they've hyper focused in. Do you think that's the case, or do you think it's just
Uh,
that people have had an interest and
no, the H is hyperactivity in ADHD. So I think they're more autistic. The autistic spectrum includes sort of that kind of really detailed focus on things. And I think people who've got that kind of characteristic, not necessarily a diagnosis, but that characteristic will be the ones that will be spending hours and hours poring over the books, looking things up, typing things in, seeing what happens if, and getting such a deep knowledge of what's going on in the mainframe. The guy that you want to ask the answer to your question, but you daren't because you know you're going to be there for an hour when he tells you.
we've all been there.
Yeah.
But he's also the same guy now that with AI, when a new challenge comes along, he's going to be the one that's not going to switch his computer off. He's going to be the one that's going to burn himself out more, I would assume, because he just wants to know the answer and keep digging until he's found that that nugget that he needs to answer his question, which other people might go, oh, we'll come back to it tomorrow. So it's about recognizing, I think, sometimes, how long are you spending on a task?
Oh yeah, I mean the whole thing about work-life balance is really important because for your own mental health, you've got to leave work. And I know some people who have been saying no, 5 o'clock or 5:30 or 6 or whatever time they've decided, I'm leaving the office and I'm going to do something else, and then come back fresher the next day. I mean, I know Americans particularly do this sort of, no need for sleep with pulling all nighter and things like that.
Yeah.
You're so cognitively impaired if you're not getting enough sleep that it's almost a complete waste of time. You're better off going to bed. The athletes, I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of the athletes do power napping now. So at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they'll go to bed, and at 2:30, they're up again. They've just had that 10 minutes of sleep, and they're back on sort of full strength, full power. Whereas, well, I know when I used to give training courses, sort of that hour after lunch was always a bit of a struggle as everyone was trying to keep their eyes open after having quite a big lunch, and it's it's a way of dealing with the day. So yeah, you got to get people to recognize again that they're overdoing it, that they're doing too much work. I mean, I
And
know you must have done it. We've all done it where you say, well, no, I just need another hour to complete this. I'm going
yeah,
to stay at work and get it done.
and you know what I was going to say? The difference between remote working and working in an office. One of the things is that when you're on site or you're working with people, maybe this is something you could just adapt slightly. You say, right, we're all going to go as a shift or as a team. We're going to go and play. For us, it was all badminton. I talked everyone into playing badminton. It's quite funny. We weren't great athletes, some of us, but we would play badminton. But it meant that you had a set cutoff, that no matter what you were working on, the rest of your shift would then be saying, hey, come on, switch off. We're going over the road. So you actually had the peer pressure from others telling you to take that break. And it's almost as if you're working from home, could you have something where you like arrange to go out for a walk with a friend or your partner, or you say, right, at this point, book an activity. And so you have to have a hard stop and you can't just keep carrying on if that's something that you're prone to.
Yeah, no, I mean that's why a lot of people got dogs, isn't it, during the COVID thing, was because you had to take the dog for a walk. You had to be responsible for a creature, and therefore you had to get away from your screen. You had to get out on the streets walking with your dog. It was
Yeah, so you're saying about people having a dog as a good way of having a set break. I had one more question around that. Earlier, you mentioned about eating properly, and it was just something that came to mind when you said about getting buried into a problem. Do you find that sometimes people are sort of so busy in a problem that they're forgetting to eat and reload and recharge their bodies?
yes, oh yeah. I mean, people can get so focused on solving whatever it is or completing the thing that yeah, they're not eating. Certainly not eating properly. They might be snacking on sort of sweets or something like that just to keep them going. And yeah, it's not doing them any good, which then makes them less able to cope tomorrow. So yeah, it does happen. It happens sort of a lot.
I work with someone, I won't mention his name, but I think he probably had stress in the past. And one of the things I noticed he done was when he was sitting next to me, he would snack on like nuts and seeds and fruit. So he wasn't like really eating, but he was grazing in like healthy snacks. Is that something that's for stress, or is that just because he was quite athletic? I was never sure.
Well, it's hard to say, but actually seeing the guy. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a good thing to do. A lot of people like grazing rather than eating big meals. So yeah, it's probably all right. But as long as he had other things to eat as well during the course of the day to keep him healthy.
Yeah,
But I mean, nuts and seeds are good for you. So yes.
or if it was just the fact that he was quite healthy and like that was just part of his general, because he used to do a lot of long distance mountain biking.
Oh gosh,
So
yes.
I guess the last question here, Trevor, because we've been talking a while, is there any other questions that I should be asking here that I haven't asked that you think would be really important when we're covering this topic for me to ask?
No, because you're asking me about things to do to get over it. I think the sort of the important takeaway for people is that in the event that they're showing any of these signs of stress, certainly the long-term stress, then they ought to be sort of thinking about how to deal with it. The problem is once you get to overwhelm or burnout, thinking about things is really hard. So you need to catch it early on, or else you need to have a friend that you can trust to help you when you get sort of further down that route. Um, because I mean, I'm a governor at a local school, and we've got quite a few teachers, or we have had over the past few years, on long-term sick, and sort of a lot of that can be, yeah, a lot of it is physical health, but a lot of it can be mental health as well, and that must be going on across the country in lots of jobs that people are just getting too far gone and are unable to recover without actually taking time off work. And if people are off work, then that's costing the companies money. They may be spending extra money to get someone in temporarily to cover it. You know, it's not good for business. It's not good for the people. So I think that would be my takeaway message rather than suggesting another question that you should ask me.
Yeah, and I think what I'll do is I'll leave with one last stat. I read somewhere that worldwide stress and burnout cost the global economy $500 billion a year.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it?
So it's yeah, I mean, there's lots of statistics you could share, lots of facts you could share, but yeah, I think with AI, remote working, having gone through COVID, changes in work practice, I think we are sitting on what I want to call a sleeping nemesis, where stress and burnout could be the next mainframe crisis, not a skills crisis, but just the people themselves may not be available to work.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And one thing we should have said is that businesses themselves need to be doing something to help prevent that. I mean, you should be able to speak to your manager. There should be sort of things in place for staff mental health so that you can go and talk to someone if you're beginning to feel any of these symptoms that we mentioned earlier, or anything else that you think must be sort of stress related. So managers need to be aware of this and not just sort of checking in on people saying, everything all right, Bob? And Bob says,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
They go on to the next one and say, well, no, I did my job. I checked everyone. You know, they need to have proper conversations, or there need to be people there in the business who are doing that.
Well, Trevor, I'm gonna say thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been good.
I've really enjoyed it and I've learned a lot. So thank you.